So I'd like to invite Shane Tobin from UPRT Australia to come up and have a chat about his company's view on where UPRT is going to be going into the future.
Right. Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Paul. And I'd like to, first of all, apologise in advance. I got back from Oshkosh yesterday morning at about 10 o'clock, so I have no idea where my body is at the moment. I wasn't sure whether I'd actually be able to do this presentation because I'm in a little bit of a unique position where I'm also an instructor in the simulators for Qantas. I instruct in 787, so I'm actually heading off to go into the sim this afternoon to run a UPRT session, believe it or not. So I'll be leaving at lunchtime. I don't know if this is working. Oh, there we go. That's better. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's any questions after lunch. Jeremy and David will be around to sort of answer any questions on what we're talking about today. So just a little bit of history on my background for those who don't know me. We talked a little bit earlier about children of the magenta line. I was one. I went through an airline connect program, and for the first number of years, basically just flew airlines and was immersed in the airline industry. And really didn't develop the stick and rudder skills. And it wasn't until later that I went out and did a little bit more flying. I actually did my career in reverse, got into the airlines, then went back and got my instructor rating, and then started instructing post getting into the airlines. And then a few years ago, Wayne was kind enough to sign me off as a TRI on 787, and then Jeremy and I started UPRT Australia only a couple of years ago when the opportunity presented itself when we were both grounded due to COVID, and we thought, well, if we don't get the opportunity, if we don't take the opportunity now, we're not going to do it. But it is something that we're very passionate about. Next slide.
Do.
So yeah, look, I'd just like to thank Paul, Blind Science Bad Attitude, for the opportunity to put this on, and for CASA coming along. Really good to see that there is regulated buy-in into this. It is really important that we are all working together, and also to the sponsors, to Dave from Oz Aeros and to the insurance providers here. So really what I'm here to talk about is, what I was tasked to sort of talk about was the future of UPRT within GA and RALs and RA flying. I'm probably going to leave you with more questions than answers, but I think those questions need to be answered before we can actually move on. And really where we are right now is probably a very pivotal point in our industry. We know that there's a problem. We're going about trying to fix it, but we need to do it in a cohesive manner. If we do it hodgepodge, we're basically going to make the same mistakes. And as the I think it was George Santiana said, that those who don't learn from history are due to repeat it. And we don't want to repeat it. Too many people have died, and just enough is enough. We know what the problem is. We've just got to find a way that we can actually fix it. In order to understand where we're going, we need to understand where we've been, what's caused the problems, and what's caused us to get to the point where we are now. Where are we now? And we can look into the future. So without understanding the history of where we are, then we can look into the future. So the first thing is, where have we been? The traditional pilot training fundamentals, and a lot of that has sort of been spoken about now previously. We've got pilot training really hasn't fundamentally changed in a number of decades. We haven't seen any fundamental changes. Perhaps that's why we're seeing the same accidents and incidents occurring for the last few decades. There's been no change. So that's probably the first thing that we need to look at. When we talk about trickle-down of regulation, what I'm talking about there is we're looking at UPRT, and I'll talk a little bit about it later. It's about why UPRT is where it is now in GA, as opposed to EMT, and where UPRT has come from, which is basically from the airlines. Everything that we see has a trickle-down effect through the industry. So to understand what the airlines are doing, and I've got a very unique perspective where I've got one foot in each camp, very firmly planted. So we can look at what the airlines are doing and why they're doing it, what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and we can utilise that to go into GA. Where have we been? Loss of control of flight. We know that they're happening, they're continuing to happen, and really there's no change in the statistics. And I'm going to put up another statistics slide, we've seen them already. Okay. Continuing to occur. So the history of UPRT, right? There were really where UPRT started. A lot of people talk about Air France 447, but UPRT actually started a little bit before that. There were 3 737 accidents in the United States back in the mid-90s where this fundamentally started. And what happened was that there was a rudder problem on the 737s where the rudders went to full deflection, caused the aircraft to have an accident. The first one was United 585 in 1991 in Colorado Springs, killed everybody on board, and the aircraft got a hard rudder. The second one was US Air, US Airlines 427 in 1994, which was in Pittsburgh. The same thing occurred. And the final one was a flight called East Wing 517, which happened on approaching to Richmond, Virginia. Now, the fundamental difference with that final one was that the captain on that, his name is Brian Bishop, had aerobatic training, and he was able to control the aircraft despite the fact that it went to hard rudder over. So it occurred 4,000 feet, 250 knots, and he was able to get away with it. And that was how they were able to actually break the aircraft apart, find the faulty part within the 737 runner, and then fix the problem. But his training was different, and they started to realise, okay, well, there were 2 accidents where you had highly trained airline pilots that were not able to control the unexpected event, and one that did. So pilot training did make a difference in those events. Then obviously, through the 1990s and 2000s, we had more pilot error accidents, as they were called. And then we had the pivotal year of 2009, we had 3 major accidents. There was Air France 447, Colgan 3407, and Turkish 1951, which crashed on approach to Amsterdam. Between those 3, they killed about 240 people. And that was all within about a 4-month period. So as a result of that, we got the FAA, EASA, and ICAO, they got the joint response, they got ICAO together, and they essentially started the path to where we are now. So since then, have we had any change? Well, yes, we have. We've had a little bit of change, but not a lot. But you can see here, we've seen that slide before, but you can see here again, loss of control of flight, the largest cause of fatalities. See, obviously, that was a major killer with the advent of ground proximity warning systems. A lot of those problems went away. Advent of improved navigational performance, a lot of those went away. But since the data, sorry, set that one. Since the data shows that since 2009, what have we had? I've just got these written down. In 2014, it was AirAsia 8501. 2006, there was flight Dubai 981, which crashed into Rostov on Don as a missed approach went wrong, killed everybody on board. There was a 747 which crashed on approach into Kyrgyzstan, a Turkish freighter, There was a loss of control in flight on the 767 Atlas 3591, which crashed on approaching to Houston in 2019, and then there was the latest one, the 737 that crashed out of Jakarta, not the MAX, but there was the other one that crashed in 2021. So these accidents have continued, and that's just a small snapshot. So these things are still occurring because we haven't seen the fundamental change yet. And this is one of the things that we, as Neil spoke about earlier, we're not going to see immediate effect. These things are going to take time because the training has not yet been embedded. So all those accidents here, they occurred overseas. Is this just a foreign problem? Well, absolutely not. The ATSB released this report back in 2013, and in the 4 years between 2008 and 2012, there were 169 genuine stall warnings in RPT aircraft in Australia. That's more than 3 per month. These pilots have been trained by us. They have all been trained within the industry here in Australia. Some of the more well-known ones, John mentioned the 747 on approach into or descent into Hong Kong, into the stick-shaped scenario in the holding pattern. There was a Virgin 737 on descent into Adelaide out of Melbourne, where they had a wind shift. They ran into a potential overspeed. The pilots disconnected the autopilot, pulled up. Fortunately, he did not do too much damage to the aircraft, but did injure flight attendants down the back in the braking limbs of flight attendants who were standing up because they heard the G of the aeroplane. And then there was a Virgin ATR, which had a similar event on descent into Sydney, where they disconnected, pulled the nose up and actually broke the stabiliser on the aircraft. So these events are occurring. Now, none of those progressed to the point where they were an actual loss of control in flight, but they were certainly heading down those paths. Not to mention, obviously, the Rex 340 event in Bathurst back in 2002. If you don't know about that one, that's a very interesting read. So, as I said, all of these pilots were trained within our industry. And the training really hasn't fundamentally changed from when those pilots would have been trained to what's being put through now. So whether we're seeing the events as common or not doesn't necessarily represent that the issue has gone away, because firmly we can see that the problem hasn't. So general aviation instructor training. This really is where the problem can be first tasked at, and we've spoken a little bit about that, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, and I'll talk about the future. There's still a confusion between EMT and UPRT, and again, people might have different views on this. My particular view on this is that EMT is the recovery training. UPRT includes the prevention and the understanding of why pilots make the decisions that they make when they're presented with an event. Every pilot who has been through pilot training has done stalls. Was it effective? Maybe, maybe not. Every pilot has been through and done seat turns. But why do pilots make the decisions that they make when they're given an unexpected event? Very rarely do we actually see the accident occur when the pilot is performing a manoeuvre that they're planning to do. It generally happens when something occurs that they're not expecting, and that's what we have to address. So we're talking a little bit about the startle and surprise. The startle and surprise response is something that we can train. We can train a response to that. I can't remember who was saying earlier, I think it was you, Paul, about how long do you have? Well, the data is very clear on this. If you don't control your startle and surprise, you have between 6 and 7 seconds until the point where your prefrontal cortex will shut down and you will be unable to recover the aircraft. If you don't take a response in an accurate and get your psychological response under control in that first 6 to 7 seconds of an unexpected event, we're done. That's what we need to be training. And if we don't understand how that affects the ongoing response after that, then we may as well go home. That's what we need to be training. So we can talk a little bit about that a little bit later on during the discussion. But that's also the fundamental difference between aerobatic training and UPRT. The aerobatic training plans for movers, the UPRT must be planned around the unexpected event. Because that's what's going to kill people, and that's what does kill people, is the unexpected event. So where are we now? We've got a whole heap of FAA regulations and guidance materials, 120-111, we've got 14 CFR 121.425, and the EASA FCL 745. Plus now we've got CASA put out a heap of stuff which we've spoken about before. The airlines, they've already basically stepped it up. They knew that this was coming. So we've got Qantas doing their UPRT training. We've got Virgin doing their own UPRT training. Some of the smaller operators still trying to get on board and still trying to understand what it's about. But if we can take the initiative here at this level, we're going to reduce the burden that actually needs to be put on those larger operators once those pilots get into the system. As John mentioned, we've got AC 121 03 that was put out. But, and as mentioned, that's really focused on the simulator side at the moment. And we're looking forward to working with CASA to try and now sort out the on-aircraft side, which is what we're going to talk about. So here we are. Now we're going to look into the future. So, understand the concepts around UPRT. First of all, what is the future? Well, I do firmly believe that the future is strong. I think if we can recognise that this is a problem which we have by the sheer fact that we're here and we're talking about it, then we're going to be on the right path. As I said, we are at a pivotal point. COVID has created a lot of problems within the industry. We're now going to see a suck through of experience through the industry. The instructors that may have been around for a while, developing some experience over the last few years, they're going to disappear. The numbers that we're looking at learning Qantas are something like around 600 pilots going through training programs within the next 12 months. That's huge. You can probably put about 300 to 400 in Virgin. Those numbers alone are going to create a massive hole within the industry of experience. So you're going to see more less experienced pilots teaching low experienced pilots. So it is going to be a problem for us moving forward. We can see more pilots picking up recreational flying through people like RALs, and I have to acknowledge the work that Neil is doing with RALs. It's phenomenal, and I'm glad that he's here and talking a little bit later on about what they're doing. But to be involved, and I thank Neil for the opportunity to be involved with some of the training videos and material that he has, really taking a step forward to getting an understanding within the pilot community as to why they need this training. As it was mentioned earlier on, pilots don't know that they need this training. They don't understand it because the instructors don't understand it, because their instructors didn't understand it. This is a generational problem, and as Neil said, it's not going to be fixed within 5 or 10 years. It's going to be a generational fix. So we've got to utilise trickle down. So the future will come good if we know that we've got to work from the top down. So ensuring that we have industry buy-in. Again, ensuring that the industry actually understands the problem. At the moment, it's pretty clear that the majority of flying instructors a lot of CFIs don't actually understand what UPRT is. They think it's unusual attitudes, they think it's spin training, they think that it's going up and just doing stuff that they can do in their 172. As you said, some of the training can be embedded early on in their 172, yeah, for sure, but there are elements that can't be. But what is UPRT? Again, it is an unexpected event. It's about understanding that the training is reducing that fear. Why do students get fearful of spins and stalls? Well, as we said, the instructors are fearful because they haven't been trained properly. They don't fully understand what's happening in a spin. A question to put out to you, it may create a bit of conversation when I've finished. Is it necessary to train people in a 10-turn spin? Is it necessary to train an instructor in a 10-turn spin when they're flying and they're instructing in an aircraft that if you do more than 3 rotations, it may not probably come out? So is it necessary? Well, maybe we just show them. This is what the incipient spin looks like. This is what the initial part of the auto rotation looks like. And let's recover. And just training the instructors in what are the scenarios that your student will get you into that is likely to result in an incipient spin or a loss of control of flight. This is part of the instructor training that we need to start looking at. So embedding UPRT within the training framework. Well, yes, eventually it's going to have to be there. But how do we do it and where do we do it? Do we have all the answers? Well, no, we don't yet. One thing I can say though is we've got to get it wrong. Because doing this wrong and getting it wrong may do more harm than good. So selection of instructors, selection of aircraft types to do the appropriate training is going to be critical. We can't just get a grade 3 instructor and go out and get them to start teaching UPRT. It's not going to happen. There's a lot of experience in this room, and there's a lot of experience in the industry, but very few people probably outside of this room and people who are doing this online probably have the appropriate qualifications to do this properly. So ensuring that the instructor syllabus to be able to instruct this is constructed correctly is a crucial part of the future. So ensuring that we instruct the instructors, train the trainers, that is the first part. And I think everyone here in the room would probably be agreeable to that. One of the things that we've also got to ensure is that we understand, like any other skill, that these skills are perishable. So just doing a one-off UPRT course or a UPRT sequence within the syllabus is not going to cover it. If you're looking at someone who's going to have a 10, 20, 30-year flying career, those skills will perish. The ability for them to recover will perish if they don't come back and practice it. So looking at being able to embed this in every second or third flight review is going to be something that we have to look at as well. Finally, we're going to have to look at the review. Okay, we're going to have to review the process and review the training. Is it effective? And is the quality of operations improving? Again, we're not going to see this for quite some time. We've got to be patient with this. But how do we measure success in this? I don't know. How do we actually measure success? If we just see a reduction of loss of control in flight accidents, does that mean that we've been successful or we've just been lucky? It's something that we're going to have to look at. And that's why this is going to have to be constantly reviewed. Training can't be shortcut. And we're going to have to take a long-term view and constantly review this. So I know, look, it's been a little bit short, and I know that I've probably left more questions than answers. But one of the things I will just sort of move back to is the concepts of UPRT. One of the things that we push on a lot in the airlines is about training for the unexpected event. But even that, to a certain extent, can't be trained in a simulator. So we can sit there and we can train an engine fire, we can train an engine failure, we can train a GPWS or a stall response. But at the end of the day, the student or the trainee who's in the simulator is in simulator mode. So they're walking into the sim knowing that they're going to have to do something not normal. So taking that into our training and going, when they're in the aircraft, they know that they're going to get something unexpected. We have to be able to train them in a response that will allow them to function for the event that they're not expecting. And I know that I spoke about this a little bit earlier, but it is really, really important. This is one thing that we push a lot in our organisation, is to train for the unexpected event. So once the so just to give you a bit of an overview, it's one thing I didn't put up here again, because I was a little short on time to get this presentation in, because I was overseas and wasn't sure if I was actually going to be able to be here or not. The rationalisation of fear comes from a part of the brain that we call the insula. And that insula is where the sensation of fear comes from, and it's in between the immediate response to what's called the amygdala, which gives us that immediate shock, flight, fright response, startle response, and as it travels up through to the higher part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which allows us to make decisions. Fear comes in two parts. It's either something that's known, and we know that it's non-fearful, and then there's everything else. So if it's something that is unknown, that presents the same response to a person or a pilot as what happens when it's something that they should be fearful of. So there's only two responses. You're either afraid or you're not. What we need to train is that ability to reduce the fear in what we're seeing. And one of the things that we see quite a bit, and when I say quite a bit, 95% of the people that come through our courses is that we see an initial regression in their response during the course. Why? Because initially we're starting out with concepts that they are sort of familiar with, and then we start introducing concepts that they're not. As we start increasing the level of threat, increasing the level of possibility that this might actually hurt them, we actually see a regression in their skills and their response. Once they've got a handle on how to actually psychologically recover themselves from the fear and the startle first, then we see these things start to improve. From the third lesson, we start to see them that, oh, they can actually conquer this. They can do it. Fourth lesson, they know that they can get past that. So once they know that they can get past that fear, that they get past the unknown, that they know that they can start dealing with something, that doesn't matter what it is, they can start making the appropriate response. And that's the crucial part to what we've got to train. We've got to be able to train that unexpected response for something that they're not expecting. So being able to embed that through instructor training, be able to embed that in our initial training, and then get that back into the recurrent training, will continue to make sure that they have those tools as they move forward through their training and through their career. So, as I said, I know this was a little bit short, but happy to either go to an early lunch because I know everyone's hungry, and I know this is one of the worst parts to talk about is just before we go to lunch because everyone's going, oh, I want to do is go and get into the sandwiches. But as I said, I know that I've probably thrown out a few more questions and answers in that. And some people believe quite strongly in the soft skills. I'm a firm believer in the soft skills. And I know that it may, may create a few interesting discussions over lunch. As I said, I'll stay here around for lunch. I've got to shoot off after lunch, and I'm sorry that I won't be able to stay here for the afternoon session. But really, where are we going in the future? Well, that's up to us. Where is the future of GA and RALs with this? This is up to us. It's up to us in the room to decide where we want to take it and decide what's important. And working together, collaborating with RALs, with CASA, is going to determine that. So, thanks for listening. As I said, I really haven't given you the answers. Don't have a lot more questions probably. But anyone got any questions before I throw it over to Paul?
Yeah. After the UPRT training, has there been a quantifiable improvement in the reaction times to the starter and surprise factor?
Yes. Yes, there has. Yeah. Short answer, yes. What we see is we say that the training and the response is time critical, okay, especially at low altitude. Now, taking out the prevention part for a moment, okay, as Paul mentioned, most of this is done in the classroom. All you're doing in the aircraft is utilising the aircraft as a tool to basically prove the concept of what you're talking about in the classroom. So we do see there is, in the initial round of upset training that we start throwing in the second lesson that we do, the response and the time that it takes to do to take the reaction is longer. But that's a good thing, because what we do say is it's better to get it right in 7 seconds than wrong in 4. So what you're teaching is a process to make sure that they understand that the response is correct, both response to the initial startle and surprise, that response is correct, and then the response, because if you never get your brain back in the game, you're never going to be able to, it doesn't matter what your hand inflicted. You may fluke it, there's a good chance you won't. And that comes from the fact that when you see a threat coming at you, your initial reaction is to back away. You see the ground coming at you, your response is that you want to get away from it, which is to pull back. So, yes, we do see an improvement in the reaction time. By the time that they're finished with us, we do see that their reaction time has improved, and generally they're wanting to correct the upset before it happens. Yes, you've got to settle them down though, because you're not getting any training benefit out of them. But you do see the reaction time improve, and again that's part of it. But we see that the reaction is correct, which is a good thing.
We have a question online from Joel. Sorry, I'll just. G'day, Joel. Go ahead.
Yeah. Industry airlines.
Hey, Joel, we're just having a bit of internet issues, it looks like, with your area. Yeah. If you could you post that in the chat for us, and we'll get Shane to come over and read it, and then you can talk about it. Is that okay? Might just take me a minute to. Yeah. Any other questions in the meantime?
Yeah. Anything else from you at the moment? Or we wait for John? John?
When we were looking at the cost benefit of UPRT as an answer to the Department of Finance's queries for all new regulations that come in, one of the things that was interesting was some evidence from the ARSA that there were spillover effects, that you were getting pilots who were better in other parts of their flying suite. Yep. Have you seen that?
Yes. Yeah, we have. One of the things that we see is that the UPRT training that we provide and what we try and push at the airline level as well, that the skills and the skills are transferable to a whole heap of other scenarios. So what you're doing is you're not really looking at the actual stick and rudder skills. You're trying to understand why the pilots make the decisions that they make given the circumstances. So a lot of that comes down to their ability to understand what their situational awareness is, so what their awareness of where they are in time and space. If you can improve that, then you're going to prevent the upset, hopefully, from occurring in the first place. But that's also going to prevent, for someone like a Davey NFR pilot, it's going to enable their improvement in situational awareness where they won't have the inadvertent flight into IMC, for example. It'll allow them to recognise the energy state of the aircraft a lot better, so that if they have that engine failure after takeoff, they know what their options are. What we also see is that by the improvement in the skills within, so I'll give you another example. The improvement in the skills within the stick and rudder and within the UPRT, at the airline level, we see that there's less training required for some of the other stuff because we're more aware of what the aircraft feels like and where they should be. So as in, once they've done after their first few sessions of UPRT and they understand, for example, what is normal. So the first lesson in UPRT is what's normal? Where should I be? What's the maximum nose up attitude that I should see? What's the maximum nose down attitude that I should see in any regime of flight, given the extremes? Climbing at max angle, descending, high speed, full speed brake. If I see anything outside of those parameters, something's going wrong. And that's the first step to prevention. So we do see that awareness does improve in other areas. It improves the awareness of the pilot and skills of the pilot, decision-making processes of the pilot in other areas. So yes, so probably to answer the next question, how many hours does it take? Well, our course is 4 hours flying. Now, I firmly believe that 4 hours spent in a UPRT session during UPRT with anyone in this room, they will get more benefit out of that than another PPL man. They're going to get more benefit out of those 4 hours doing this than what they will out of another PPL man. So, where's the cost benefit? Well, I think it's right there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an addition. It can be a replacement of some other sort of training.
Yeah, I'll read it out if you like. Joel asks, is there a need for airline pilots to also do some in-aircraft upset training to help with the startle reaction to zero or negative G situations? I understand a sim can't do negative G.
Well, the sim can't really replicate G at all. So that is a limitation. So the answer to the question, Joel, is no. There is no requirement for pilots or airline pilots to have to do in-aircraft training. And I don't believe that it won't become a requirement. One of the things that I do say to the pilots that I fly within the airline industry is that it would be great for them to come and do on-aircraft training and have a look at how the response that they're training in the simulator translates onto an aircraft, because the skills are transferable. What we teach on our aircraft here are transferable onto the airlines. If you follow that template, I think John put it up before, that FAA put out, the response is exactly the same. Actually, no, it wasn't. It was Rick Stoll put up earlier on, the nose high, the nose low. And air transport aircraft respond, yes, they respond slower, but they're airplanes that fly. So you can transfer the skills out of the airline onto these types of aircraft and these aircraft onto the airlines. It's about just understanding the difference in the aerodynamics. So no, there is no requirement, but I do firmly believe, my personal view is that there is a great benefit to bringing to pilots going and doing this on aircraft, because you can instigate that startle and surprise. You can feel the G. You can understand, you can feel the aircraft in other ways that you can't do in the simulator. We just cannot replicate the same G load, the same startle and surprise as what we can in the aircraft. So obviously we don't want to go to negative G on an air transport aircraft. And obviously we've got a smaller envelope as well. We've only got 2.5 G positive to play with. So having a pilot being able to understand what 2 or 2.5 G feels like is really important. But it's not going to be legislated. I mean, you just have to get our head of schools are very good.
It's very good,
Yeah.
because it teaches you the same techniques to recover, and that's important.
Yeah. No, you're right, Wayne, because we do have the ability, some of the aircraft, we've got it in the simulator up here, the one that's up here, we've got that ability.
Trees up here,
Yeah, that we can instigate an upset on the instructor panel without them knowing that it's coming. And it basically feels like a wake turbulence encounter initially. They'll sort of fly along, so they could be on approach, they could be in the terminal area, it could be a cruise, we can put in an upset, and it can go to 120 degrees, 60 degrees, no sound on that. So that can instigate it, but again, it is one of those things where just acknowledging the fact that they know they're in a simulator, and occasionally you pull up the VG diagram and show them where they put the aircraft. But it is the simulator is a great tool. There is no doubt about that, but certainly from a G loading perspective, you're just not going to get that in the sim.
We'll have to call it there for lunch, guys and ladies. Thanks to Shane and appreciate his with all driving through the jet lag. Thank you.